not so secret evil plan is that we empower the artists of Western Mass to apply for as many grants to create as many amazing projects as possible. Yes. And I know that the application process can feel intimidating sometimes, and sometimes the way what an artist is defined as can feel like maybe that's not you, but I assure you, this is for you. This is $5,000 of unrestricted funding, which means you don't have to have a project. You can, like, I don't know, garden and make omelets if you want, whatever. It's just for you to be a creative person in this incredible ecosystem here in the Valley. And the more people apply, the more folks like Mass Cultural Council and other funding entities understand that here in the Valley we have an amazing density of creative human beings doing cool stuff, and this is how you get it funded. You know, if they know that you're here, they pay attention to us, there's more money in the ecosystem. Like, the rising tide really does lift all the boats. We all get to do the wonderful things we want to do. So, I'm going to turn it over to Wilder. He's going to walk you through, and then we'll answer questions at the end.
All right. Is it working? Oh, wow. Hello. So we are recording this for folks who can't be here today, which is why I'm using this to really maximize making this audible for the recording. So thank you for bearing with me. My name is Wilder Ayers. My pronouns are they, them, and I am so honored to be here with y'all this evening. I work with a lot of different organizations here in the beloved Valley. I grew up here and been here for a long time. I'm an educator, organizer, advocate, and artist myself, and I also have a vested interest in really empowering artists and cultural organizers to break down barriers to accessing funds to support the amazing work that you do. Because we know that through our multidisciplinary practice, collectively we hold the vision for the world that we believe is possible, and every project that we create is a step in that direction. And so I'm really excited to be here today with y'all in conversation about the grants for creative individuals. A brief overview for how this is gonna go. We're going to break down some of the sort of barrier-filled grant language that often makes, I know in my experience, me be like, oh, no, this is not for me. And then we're going to talk through the actual pieces of the grant writing process. And then I'm gonna leave some time at the end for questions. And I'm happy to then circulate through the room if folks actually wanna get a head start in starting some of the writing. I'm happy to work one-on-one with folks. I'll say this at the end as well. I'm gonna give my email. And after this presentation, I'll be following up with the slides. And I'll be following up with the template for the grant, so you can just copy and paste it and work from there. And I'll also be accessible for you if you want a second set of eyes before you submit the grant, or you have any additional questions that arise. Again, we all get to dream into and enact the world we believe is possible, and I think it begins with all of us supporting together and thinking abundantly about what our multidisciplinary art scene can look like. All right. So I actually would first like to start with, so I kind of talked us through that. I want to start with this quote. There's an amazing non-binary performance artist and activist named Alok Vaid Menon, and they say, the job of an artist is to replenish imagination, is to say there are ideas we haven't considered yet, feelings we haven't encountered yet, love we haven't surrendered to yet. Yet is the most beautiful word ever built. Let's live there together, redesign existence. How do you replenish your imagination? And I'm starting us with this quote because when we sit down to write a grant sometimes, we lose our heart, we lose our purpose, and we lose the reason why we're making our art to begin with. And it's that very question of how do we replenish our imagination? How do we as artists hold the key to redesigning existence? That in those questions and in that sort of authentic energy of the voice of why you make your art is where the success of your grant lies, and we can't forget that. So actually what I'd like to do before we jump in is I'd like you to take a moment and introduce yourself to somebody you don't know here in the space. Share your name, pronouns, and why you make the art you make. In this workshop, we're going to start getting our thoughts flowing, our ideas flowing, and figure out how we synthesize that and translate that into the grant itself. So take 2 minutes, turn to somebody you don't know, introduce yourself, and share why you make the art you make. Thank you. All right, friends, let's just wrap that up. So maybe you can continue these conversations, in the world and beyond this workshop. I think something that I know to be true for myself, working as an individual artist, sometimes it can be a very lonely practice, even if the work that you do is inherently public. And so the more that we can connect across our disciplines and our different worlds of art making, I think, who knows what you could dream up with the person that you just connected with. All right, so the next question I want to ask you to turn to the same person and ask, and this is starting to contextualize some of the questions that really do arise on the grant itself. What does it mean to transform society with art? What does that look like in your creative practice? So again, these questions, welcome! These questions, I'm asking you because I want to, again, start contextualizing the work that we make within the context of these questions, because it will help you then interpret the work that you make into this grant as we move forward. So turn to the same person you were talking to and engage in a 2-minute conversation using these 2 questions as the foundation. Oh, great. Go for it. Nice to meet you all. Hi, all. Welcome. I'm good. I'm Wilder. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. Did you get the other All right, friends. I wish we could talk all night. These are such rich questions to dive into. Thank you so much for taking my invitation to engage in those questions. I hope it was generative, and I hope that we can continue these conversations. So I want to start talking through some of the words that come up in the grant language, and unpack some of these words, and then we'll jump into an overview of like all of the components of the grant itself. So unrestricted. In the grant world, for folks who, raise your hand if you've applied for a grant before. Okay, cool. Raise your hand if you've never applied for a grant. Yeah, woo! Okay, cool. So unrestricted is a beautiful word in the grant world because it means, like Sandra was saying, you don't have to do anything for the money, they just give it to you. You don't have to like build an entire city in 24 hours like we usually have to do as artists. You just get $5,000 and you can pay your bills, which is lovely. And it was born out of the pandemic, early stage of the pandemic, as sort of a reparative action and model of trying to compensate artists in a time where a lot of our income just like disappeared overnight, right? And they continued it on, which is amazing. So another word that comes up in the grant is we have all these different ways we can identify ourselves. We can be artists, musicians, dancers, composers, whatever. But then they say culture bearers. Whoa, okay. Is that what I do? I don't know. When you hear culture bearer, what does that mean to you? I'd love to get some thoughts flowing. So if you want to define it, if you don't mind just jumping in. Culture bearer, what does that mean? There's no right or wrong. Let's try to figure out what this means together.
Someone pulling an ox cart full of baubles and beads.
Someone pulling an ox cart with baubles and beads. Okay, cool. I like it.
Pulling the past into the present.
Pulling the past into the present. Ooh, all right.
Or
Yeah.
forging a new future.
Forging a new future. Beautiful. Yeah.
Someone passing a torch. Like,
Passing a torch.
yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
I think of indigenous culture bearers, like people who pass along folklore or traditional songs and things like that. That's why I assume culture bearer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Language?
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So all of these elements that you've kind of identified here really do fit underneath the banner of culture bearer. It can be a way, the Mass Cultural Council is doing a lot of work to really like resource and support indigenous art making in the state of Massachusetts, which is incredible. So it can, mean like the carrying on of your cultural artistic practice based on your culture. But it also can be more like it can be more loosely defined. And that's the thing that's kind of tricky in some of these grants is at the end of the day there really isn't any right or wrong. It's about like finding the definition that you can contextualize your practice like in the best way possible. So for me, I spent like 10 years as a touring musician and pretty exclusively making music. In the past 5 years, I've been more of like a cultural organizer. I'm like organizing public events. I'm doing a lot of work to support other artists who are making their art. But I'm still working as an artist. Like it's just, I'm more in like the organizing sphere. So again, I'm just bringing this word forward because maybe you're not an individual artist, but you're like a facilitator of space through culture publicly, and that's what you do. And I just want to like invite you into this conversation as well, even if you don't relate to being like an artist, right? Do you want to add anything to that? I feel like I don't want to put you on the spot, but I feel like we've talked a lot about this kind of word in a lot of our conversations, and I'm curious, like if you want to kind of add to that. You want to use this?
Yeah,
Here.
great.
Yeah.
So I think really what's incredible about this particular opportunity is the expansiveness of what is considered an artist, or what is considered a culture bearer. Sorry, I'm sort of tongue-tied today. And there are so many different practices. I think all of us have a very clear idea about what visual arts look like. We have a very clear idea about the performing arts, but there are all of these other roles in our community that support the creative ecosystem. And the invitation in this application is to really consider that. Like, as Wilder was pointing out, if you're doing organizing, not play on the festival stage, but make that happen, you are a cultural bearer. You are an organizer. If you're a person who organizes the performing group that you're working with, if you're someone who is interested in activating spaces, like all of these things are part of what make living here and being creative interesting. All of that counts.
Thank you.
Is
So,
Is there a definition for culture bearer, or in terms of the application?
I would have to go into their website. I don't actually know if that is laid out on the application itself. It's a word that they use often, so I was just trying to highlight it and get us to like wrap our minds around it. Yeah.
Something maybe just late is that to me it implies responsibility. When you're bearing, you're carrying something that if you don't do it, it gets lost.
Right.
That's beautiful.
Legacy, yes.
That's really beautiful. Yeah. Yes.
And I was wondering if teacher, teacher of young children, or teaching children through art.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. I think again, it's just like it's all about how you contextualize your practice, like as a teacher, like, and really letting like the art be the leading point of the storytelling. If that makes sense in your grant, and we can talk more about that. I'm happy to. I used to be like an arts integration teacher, and so I'd be happy to like help you kind of figure out how you want to contextualize like what you do within this grant. Yeah. So another word that gets thrown around is creative practitioner. Creative practitioner. We have culture bearer, creative practitioner. Really quickly, what is, when you hear creative practitioner, what does that mean?
You're working every day. Art.
Yeah, you're practicing your creativity and you're committed to it, you're showing up to it, and you have some sort of like tangible like product that you've created. Whether it's like recordings as a musician or a script as a playwright, or like, you're showing that like dedication over time. So then like words like achievement come up on the grant. And I know for me, I see that word and I'm like, oh no, have I done enough? Am I a real boy? I don't know. And so with achievement, like don't be like off put by that. Again, I'm just gonna say this is for you. This grant is for you. You are artists, you are culture bearers, you are creators, you are community organizers of art. This is for you. And I just wanted to highlight that word because sometimes that can be a point where we're like, oh no, I didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. Am I eligible? You're good. Cultural practice. What does that mean when we hear that? Cultural practice.
I think a practice is anything that you do repetitively. So it's not, you just had this idea and did it on a Saturday and never did it again. It's something that you're continuing to do over and over. It's your practice.
Love that. Yes?
You need to be tuned in, or it helps to be tuned in. You're actually paying attention to what's happening, and you're trying to get in the stream of that culture.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, so again, I'm just bringing these words up because, again, like, this kind of language might help you frame your work, or it might be a barrier when you hit it. And I want it to only be something that you can flow through and either relate to or move away from.
Yeah.
Results. When we see that word, what is, like when we think about our artistic practice, what is a result?
Yeah, that's what people.
Result. What was that? Something you created. Yeah. Yeah. Something with grand language that feels kind of dry and like inhuman in a way is like the way that everything is like broken down like a supply chain. And we're not supply chains, we're people. We're making our art and our results. It might be a song we wrote, or something we created with our hands, or a community event we organized. Just highlighting that word. So we're gonna start breaking down the grant requirements. Just wanted to reference the pages that I handed y'all, or that you picked up at the beginning, one is an example of a wonderful local queer singer-songwriter, and cultural organizer who applied for the grant this year, or last year, and received the funding. So they generously shared this with everyone this evening, and I wanted to share this as a sort of like a point of reference of, you know, an exemplary application. And then the other piece that we shared is literally an overview of what the application is and what is required, so you can kind of have that as a personal checklist. So I'm just gonna go through these grant requirements, and then we're gonna actually talk through the application itself. So you have to be 18 years of age or older, you have to be a full resident of Massachusetts, starting in the calendar year 2024, and you can't be currently enrolled in college or university as a full-time student. You have to have not received the Cultural Sector Recovery Grant, the Artist Fellowship Grant, or Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Grant over $2,000 in 2022, 2023, or 2024. And you are not a governor-appointed Mass Cultural Council member, and you're not the family of Mass Cultural Council member. So just something to kind of turn back to what you were saying earlier is like, the more people we get to apply in Western Mass, the more we put Western Mass on the map. Because the way that they decide like the allocation is based on the percentage of applicants from the geographic region. So if we drive that up, but with our applications, we're bringing more visibility to the need for funding for artists in our community. Something that I want to say is have heart. If you don't receive the grant this year, it's the same application every year. I know somebody who had to apply 3 times before they finally received it. If you don't get it, it's usually a matter of the fact that the need is so great. There's so many of us making amazing multidisciplinary art that they're just kind of going, like they're doing the best that they can. And so, like, just keep showing up. Make sure you have a system for saving your application so you don't need to do the work twice. And then you can return to it, tweak it next year if you don't get it this year, and do it again. I want to just say, in my own experience of applying, I really want to hit this home because it's so easy to greet this process with imposter syndrome, and in a society where there's already so little support for us as independent artists, it's easy to be like, oh, I didn't get it, I'm not good enough. No, not true. That is not the frame. You have to keep showing up. You are good enough, you are enough, your art is enough, and you need to keep returning and applying, right? Because not only, if you don't receive it this year, just consider that you're continuing to elevate the need in Western Mass, and that in itself only exponentially will benefit you in the future, right? So keep showing up to this application. Yes?
Okay, 2 other things I want to add. One, if you don't get funding, don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Because you never know who the cohort is. You never know who else applied, and your application might stand out next year or in 2 years based on the pool of applicants in any given year. So it's never a reflection on how excellent your application is. As Wiley was pointing out, the funds are distributed geographically by percentage of people who apply. So the more of us who are in the pool, the more funding we pull towards Western Mass, the more likely we all are to get funded.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So again, the Mass Cultural Council has been doing a lot of work, like in equity specifically, and it's really showing, and it's really amazing. And so, specifically folks who identify as BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, Latinx, Asian, Native American, Pacific Islander, and all other ethnicities of color, and or people who identify as a person with disabilities are priorities for this funding. But what I want to say, also culture bearers of traditional arts, like we were talking about, applicants can self-identify as a culture bearer of traditional arts at the beginning. So if you come from like cultural artistic practice and you feel like you fit in that definition, amazing, self-identify and contextualize your application in that capacity. And these are kind of like the funding, or these are like the priorities that that they're really prioritizing getting funding to. And also, if you fit the other eligibility requirements, you qualify. I'm just highlighting this because it's really, I just want to like make sure folks are aware of the funding priorities. The other thing I want to say is like folks whose creative practice has been limited by poverty, are also a huge priority. So applicants will need to provide current proof of participation in one of the following programs: supplemental, so SNAP, food stamps, Mass Health, Medicaid. The list goes on, and again, I will share this slide with you. We'll circulate a list for folks to write down their emails, and you can see if you fit in any of these categories. You don't need to disclose that, but if you do, it's only going to kind of help contextualize like how their funding choices, and they're really trying to allocate funding to folks who have been historically marginalized by the systems that we exist in. And that's at multiple intersections. So if you feel comfortable self-identifying, I really encourage you to do that. But also in their words, please note that funding prioritization is different from eligibility. So if you meet the eligibility requirements, like you're really encouraged to apply again. So we're gonna start talking through the actual application itself. The application starts with artist discipline category. So if you want to take out the template that was a handout, I'm going to start really talking you through these individual pieces. So you have to basically write 200 characters, which feels cruel when we're talking about what we're passionate about, describing your discipline. Now I'm going to give you another example. You have an example on that other sheet. But for example, this is somebody who applied, I think a couple of years ago. I'm a trans mask artist using ink, watercolor, and printmaking to create worlds of gender euphoria, celebration, and connectedness to nature for trans and non-binary people. So this is like a very brief, very specific, kind of, but also simultaneously generalized statement about your practice. Imagine if you were writing a bio that could only be like barely 3 sentences long, right? This is the thing that this is the initial soundbite that you want to grab the reader with, that defines your practice. So something that I'd like us to do is, I know we have a couple of folks who have just arrived, but I'd like you to take another minute, and I'd like you to turn to maybe we'll just turn to the same folks that you've been connecting with, but I'd like you to just look around. If there's folks that have arrived that weren't here before, invite them into the conversation. And I want you to take about 2 minutes, being aware of giving each person just a little bit of time to kind of start talking through what your little soundbite to describe what you do would be. Think of it as an elevator pitch. How do you grip a person who doesn't know anything about you, anything about your artistic practice, in the moment, in 2 sentences, okay? And something that I want to highlight, and using this as an example, and also the example that you were given in that printed sheet, is that it's really helpful to not just say I wouldn't just say my name is Wilder, oh wait, nope, hang on. I wouldn't just say, I am a musician and I tour. Including something about the identity that you hold, if that feels like a leading edge for you, that you share publicly and really contextualizes and informs your practice, that's gonna help add another dimension to who you are immediately. So trying to find is your cultural identity significant? Is any of the identities that you hold in the cosmos of your identity significant, and you're willing to kind of lead with that? Think about how you can personalize that statement beyond what you do. Who are you? What do you do? And why? And can you capture that in this little elevator pitch? That's the first section of the application. All right, so we're gonna take, let's say 5 minutes, and turn to the group that you were with before with the mindfulness of folks who have arrived, and each of you take 30 seconds or so to jump in with what you do and just practice letting it roll out. There's no right or wrong. Just see how it feels to get your mind in that space. This is the first question on the application. All right, go. One more minute, friends. Thirty more seconds. Wrap up your pitch.
You have that written down, I should jot that down.
All right. Sorry if I'm cutting some of you off. 5 minutes goes by faster than I'd like. So again, the first question on this grant is describe your work, 200 characters, say more about your discipline or category in your own words. 200 characters. For folks who are unfamiliar with character counts, something that I recommend is if you, there's a way to check your character counts that's really easy. I'll send this link in the follow-up email, but there's a free kind of like search engine through Google where you can you can copy and paste the text that you're writing and it will tell you the character count. That way you don't have to like individually go through and count it yourself. And it's really helpful in the grant writing process, especially when things need to be really succinct. So if you have any questions around character counts, again, I'll send you some resources on that, and once you get the hang of it, it will be straightforward. I'm curious, would a couple people be willing to share what they came up with, if it felt alive in the moment? No pressure, but if anyone would be willing to share. Anyone want to jump in? I get it. The same. Okay, now let me ask you a follow-up question. What did you learn from that process of trying to synthesize what you do into a very narrow margin? It's complicated. Oh my God, right? When you're passionate about something, you're like, what? 200 characters? Yes.
I wanted to bring up a topic that we were chatting about, but just to, I don't hope this isn't too sensitive, but just the example that you gave as well of that, the person who said, I'm trans, mass, musician, can't remember the details of what they wrote. Can you touch on whether to disclose elements of who you are, your identity? Because part of it is, to me, it's like, yeah, it does influence somewhat, like, how I'm creating now, but it also feels like, like it's a grant game to be like, hi, I'm this thing, and I'm that thing, and you should give me money because I'm disadvantaged, right?
It's
Like,
really a disgusting world out there. And also it's up to you. You don't have to disclose what you don't want to. Unfortunately, the funding space is, they're doing what they can with what they have. And unless you disclose what you disclose, they're not gonna know, like they're trying to reach like the most marginalized parts of our community, specifically like clicking off that like you identify as BIPOC or you identify as low income or you're on mass health or you want, they're trying to do what they can within the systems that they have to resource folks who have been historically under-resourced. If that's you and you feel comfortable sharing that, then that's the only way they know that they can like direct that funding to you, right? I will say from my experience in the grant writing world and in just the fundraising world in general, like it feels disgusting to constantly be like, I'm trans. No, I don't wanna, that's not my leading edge. I'm wilder. I have so many other things I wanna say about myself. And this is where the funding space is right now, sadly. And also excitingly, because it's leveraging, like Mass Cultural Council, I wanna actually be clear, by the way, I didn't say this. I don't work for Mass Cultural my reflection to you is only my lived experience. It's not like some like corporate answer. But I can tell you, I have written a lot of grants, and I've written for organizations. I've supported artists in writing their grants. I've written grants as an artist, and I think right now where the funding space is, from my perspective, is like they're reckoning with huge inequality. And a lot of conversations are going into like, what is philanthropy's role in reparations? How can we actually like tangibly do something to repair societal harm caused to marginalized communities, right? And so sometimes checking a box out is like the first step. I'm sorry I went off, but like I feel you, and also like whatever you feel comfortable sharing, I would share. Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, wrong way. I'm trying to get out of here. Okay. So the next part. Oh, okay. This is a little. Sorry, this slide is a little backwards. I apologize. Is the artist's narrative, and thankfully they give us a section where we get to talk a little more expansively about the art that we make. So it's not just like 200 characters. It's 1,500 characters. And so what's also really great is you can write it, or you can record yourself speaking for 2 minutes, or you can film a video of yourself for 2 minutes. So if writing is not your forte and that feels like a barrier, you don't have to write it. You can just speak organically about yourself. I think that they're genuinely not privileging any medium over the other. So if really one of those mediums works better for you and you feel like you can more authentically capture the spirit of the work that you do, choose that medium. Okay? And so again, like if it's recorded, it just has to be 2 minutes. It can't be more than 2 minutes.
It was 3 last year, it's 2 now.
It's 2 minutes now. Yeah, sorry, this slide is from last year. I'm sorry, I didn't edit that. But refer to this printout. This printout is current. So they must have narrowed it down, because they must have had hours of listening to do. They're like, whoa. Yeah, so I really encourage you again, like if writing is not like your preferred medium, like film a selfie video or use the audio recording on your phone, and then you can export that to your computer. Again, like I'm not a tech wizard, but if you needed support on that, I'd be happy to like, if you're like, oh, I think I'm gonna do that and I'm not sure how to do that, I'd be happy to like kind of show you how to do that before I leave. Because it's just a couple of steps, and if that's something you don't know how to do, I'd be really happy to support that. Yeah.
What if you're working with a community-based organization to get funds similar to this to expose younger kids to art? I mean, you can still use the same diagram that you have there and follow that?
So you can apply as the organization, but you can apply as yourself who works in that organization facilitating arts experiences for kids. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, it does.
So again, thank you for that question, by the way, because I know a lot of us work for organizations where we're working as artists or working as like organizers in those organizations, but this is really for you as an individual to speak to the work that you do. So you can contextualize your work as like a arts organizer within that organization, but it's about you, not the organization. Yeah. So in this section, you can share about your work as an artist, culture bearer, creative practitioner, and how it demonstrates your achievement of creative expression and commitment to your artistic or cultural practice. So again, we talked about this word achievement. What that means, like, I'm going to kind of go through different disciplinary practices. So let's say you're organizing arts events for kids in a community organization. I organized 15 workshops for kids ages 8 to 15 in multidisciplinary arts experiences in my community in this year. Like, you're trying, for the achievement piece, you're just trying to find something tangible that you can like kind of nail down in something that you've kind of done, right? Like, I recorded this album. I've recorded 5 albums. I recently had my new play performed, or I just finished like my 7th script. Like, you're just trying to show them that you're showing up consistently to your work and that you have in this like achievement sort of result section, you're trying to just like not have it so general, like the first elevator pitch, right? And I think what a really great example is in the example application that we handed out at the door. Carrie Ferguson says, I've released 2 albums of adult music, 2 kids albums, 6 singles, 10 music videos. My 2021 family music album, The Grumpy Time Club, won several awards, blah, 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 blah. Listen, you don't have to have won awards to apply for this grant. But I'm trying to use this example because what they're doing is they're giving like kind of tangible data to point to how they keep showing up to their artistic practice. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Don't feel off put by that. Because for me, I haven't like recorded something in like, I don't know, like 3 years or more. It's been a long time. So like, I would feel daunted if I read that from my vantage point, but don't feel daunted. Whatever you've done is enough. So again, this is like a 1,500 character section, and what I'd like to do is kind of like talk through how Carrie has laid out their application. Again, you are you. Whatever makes your authentic voice shine and highlight your artistic practice is great. There's no formula for how we write about these things, but I actually found this really helpful when I looked at it, because sometimes when you're looking at your whole practice, which feels so big, like having this kind of like overview helps you like narrow it in a little bit. So what I see what Carrie's doing here is they start off, I'm just referencing like the writing at the very bottom of the page. So it's as an LGBTQ artist is where it starts. So they kind of bring us back to a bit more about them like personally, like kind of why they make what they make. And then they are moving on to the second paragraph. They're talking about a current project that they're working on, and they say, see sample work right there in that second paragraph, and they're gonna be, we're gonna talk about this after, about work samples. They're referencing a sample that they're attaching sort of as demonstrated commitment to their craft. And they're talking a little bit more about like what's upcoming in their artistic practice and like what they're working towards to, again, to demonstrate like, this is what they do, right? Then they're moving into like, I strive to create excellent, well-crafted music with powerful melodies and interesting, inspiring lyrics. They're talking about like what they aspire to, like why they make what they make, like what they're like working towards in their practice. And then before they culminate with their list of like the kind of accomplishments, their current accomplishments, they literally say in this grant application, I love my work. I love how it feels to have a new song hatching, like an all-consuming love affair. I love working with students, helping them access their own creativity and musical spark. I love performing with my band and getting the audience dancing. I love the sense of purpose and connection I get when someone approaches me after a show to say how they needed to hear that song, that moment, right? So again, I'm sharing this language because it's so alive, it's from the heart, right? It's like why we show up time and time again to our craft, right? And we each have our own authentic way of expressing that, and I think sometimes when we think about a grant, we're like, oh, now I have to become a dry academic and talk about this to these funding people, right? No, the people vetting these grants are artists. They live in the state of Massachusetts. They may have some overlap in shared experiences that you have. They may hold some of the identities that you hold. They understand, and you can speak from the heart. You don't need to be anyone other than who you are when you write this grant. And I really encourage you to let your authentic voice shine, because that's the thing that's gonna grab the reader, right? Be you, not anybody else. So, some questions to consider when you're writing this, and I have these questions highlighted on this application, and these questions came from Mass Cultural Council. So, what are you trying to express with your creative work? How is this reflected in your work samples? So, again, we're gonna go to the work sample section, and this will make more sense. How do your creative work habits and/or results show your commitment to your artistic cultural practice? What do we need to know to best understand your artistic/cultural practice and creative expression? So if you're sitting and looking at that question like, how am I ever going to write my artist narrative? Ask yourself those questions first. See if you can come up with answers to those questions, And I imagine an answer to that artist narrative lies within an answer to those questions, right? So, let's see, oh yeah, we went, we're gonna go back to work sample. So if you go back to the Grants for Creative Individuals template, you're gonna see work sample upload instructions. So the final part of this application is basically where you get to showcase your artistry, right? So I'm gonna speak as a musician, as an example right now, but I also am happy to speak to any other disciplines here and answer any specific questions you might have about your discipline. So, to demonstrate your achievement of creative expression and commitment to your artistic cultural practice, submit a sample or samples of your creative work. Your work sample should be in progress or completed within the last 5 years. So this is current work that you've been working on. And something I think that's really beautiful is like, they say in progress. Like, how beautiful is that in a product-oriented society? Like, you could be recording a song, you have a voice memo that you intend to record at some point, like in the studio, but you can submit that, right? You might have a sketch of something you're eventually gonna turn into a mural that's gonna be painted, you know, on the side of a public building, and you can send in that sketch. You might have like a series of posters from different workshops you've organized to demonstrate like, you know, you're organizing kind of like cultural organizer practice. That could be your work sample. Like, you might be a filmmaker and you have like you have bits and pieces of a film that you're working on. That can be your work sample. Anything that really demonstrates your creative practice. Like, think of it as like a miniature portfolio. So you may submit up to 5 total minutes, pages, images, or files. So it can be a combination of all of those things. Like, I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I write and I make music. So my application, if I apply, could very well be a page from a script I've written, a recording, and and so it could be like a page of a script and 2 songs, right? If that totals 5 minutes. So again, if you are defining yourself across different artistic disciplines and that's your practice, that's okay. You can share a lot of different examples of your work. The important thing is, again, you may submit up to 5 total minutes, pages, images, or files. This can be one file type, include a mixture of file types. The important thing is the total count is at least 1 and no more than 5. They're very specific about that. Yes?
Is that for each sample or for all?
For all. Yeah. So like, you can only submit, if you're writing a script, you can only submit 5 pages of that script. If you're writing an anthology of poems, you can only submit 5 pages of those poems. If you're a songwriter, you can only submit 5 minutes of recording. If you're a filmmaker, 5 minutes of film.
So what if you're an artist? Can you submit
5.
minutes of images?
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
think you can
Like
like
5-minute slideshow.
Yeah, you could do a 5-minute slideshow of your work. That's a cool idea. I like that. Yes, my friend.
Does this 5 minutes include the 2 minutes from above already?
No. The 2 minutes is a separate section where you're talking about your craft. This is work samples. So the 5 minutes is not you talking about the work you do, it's your work.
Can you narrate them?
I don't think that would serve you on this application. I only say that because you won't be able to submit it unless you have defined both of those sections. Does that make sense? Like you have to, if you if you record 2 minutes as your artist narrative, you're gonna have to upload that, and then separately you're gonna have to upload your work sample. Otherwise, it won't let you submit it. It'll just say it's incomplete. Yeah, I love that. I feel like you should be able to do that, but the application's not gonna let you.
Like, if your artist narrative is you singing a song about your artist narrative.
I mean, I'm sure you could get like really creative. Like go for it, you know? Like, I mean, this is So like, take it and run. I don't know. I mean, we're artists, right? I think like that might really stand out. Yeah.
Is there any chance that they would accept an EPUB?
Sorry, what?
An EPUB, which is so one of my pieces is a book, it's an ebook with embedded music.
Whoa.
I don't believe that's one of the files.
I think the only file types that they accept are here. I do know that on the website there is a contact for this grant specifically, like through the Mass Cultural Council. You might be able to ask them that question, but I think that these are the file types that they've defined. So I think that's what we're working with, but you might want to reach out. I don't know. Yeah.
I wanted to add one other thing, which is that they've been seeing more and more of these applications for this particular grant come in. So get creative. Like if someone has to read 500 grant applications, make yours the one that stands out. So by all means, sing your artist statements or do a slideshow of your paintings or something so that it doesn't look like the application that they read before.
That's a fun challenge. That's cool. I like that. You should definitely do that. All right.
Could you do a video of like walking through your gallery or your studio?
Yeah, that can be your artist, your work sample, I imagine. Yeah. Yeah, as long as it's showing your art. Why not? All right, so that's the grant. That's it, which is amazing. While the lift can feel heavy and insurmountable, it's actually pretty amazing that that amount of funding is available. With maybe it will feel like a lot of effort the first time you apply, but again, like if you don't get it, you're gonna have that work done. Just keep showing up to this process, keep submitting, keep going for it, and you just really don't know what will emerge based on the applicant pool. I just want to kind of reiterate that I'll be following. Do we have a sign-up sheet like for emails?
So we have everyone's email if you pre-registered, and we'll have a clipboard. I'll put it over there. If you did not pre-register, or if you were one of those people who signed up for 2 people, and the second person that you came with would like the stuff sent to them individually, sign up and we'll send it to you.
And so yes, go ahead.
Question, the deadline's the 24th
Yes.
of this month, so when you notify if you're awarded the grant or not? Is there a time period that they do that, or?
Yeah, I actually don't know that off the top of my head. When I follow up with that email, I'll make sure to answer that question. I think that they have all that information laid out on the Mass Cultural website. That's a really good question, but I will find the answer to that and make sure that goes out in the email that I send out to everybody. In that email will be a Google Doc that you can just make a copy of that will have the application like template that you have like the printed version of, so you can just start writing right into it. And something I want to say is like if you want me to look over it, if you send it to me like at least 48 hours before it's due, I'd be happy to look at it and offer feedback. But if it's past that, I can't guarantee I'll be able to turn it around. But don't be shy. Like if you have questions or anything emerges in your writing process or creating process that you're kind of feeling uncertain about, like do not be shy. Again, my goal is like as many artists as possible from Western Mass apply for this grant, and anything that I can do to support that, like I mean it. You'll hear from me. I will also make sure that a digital like copy of this like example grant is also in that email, and I'll also make sure the slideshow is, and I'll make sure the information is updated so there's no confusion. And what I'd like to just put forward, and I'll get to in one quick second, is I'm happy to answer any questions folks have, but if it would be useful, I can stay for another half hour, and if you want, if you have your computers with you, I'm happy to circulate and jump in and like support you if you have any immediate like one-on-one questions. And also want to encourage you to like continue your conversations with the folks that you are kind of doing some preliminary brainstorming with while you have your computer open, because sometimes that can be a really Before I jump into questions, I just want to say, again, as a reminder, like, be you, not anybody else in this application. And like, only you make the art that you make, right? Only you can speak to that. So as much as we can collectively heal any imposter syndrome that we carry on our shoulders, you don't need to be anyone other than who you are to apply for this grant. And again, I want to say, if you don't get it this time, keep showing up, and you'll keep honing your practice as a grant writer. And please keep a system for saving your applications. Do not write it into the portal. Make sure you're writing it into a doc so you have it as a reference point for next time you're applying for grants. Because that's really hard work that you're doing, and you don't want it to disappear into ether. All right. Well, friends, I'm happy to answer any questions. If you want to head out, that's totally fine.